isn't it possible that,
Mm-hmm.
people can get in touch with us and to say, like, oh, I didn't see that, or I'm unplugged? It's like,
Mm-hmm.
that is a really interesting way for us to think about people being, or hey, I actually can't do all of these things
Mm-hmm.
today. It
Mm-hmm.
seems like we now live in a world where we see people doing so much, especially with social media. I mean,
Nedra, I am so excited to be with you today. It's truly an honor. And I mean, the first podcast of the year for you. That's it's pretty cool.
I think so. Yeah, I'm just dusting off my equipment here and getting back into the flow of work. It's been a slow year intentionally.
I know, and I want to dig into that. We're going to go all things boundaries here. All right,
Ooh,
Nedra, I'm pumped. So,
yes.
how do you define boundaries? Right, like get me inside of how you define it, think about it, coach people to it, etc.
Boundaries are statements, phrases, way of showing up that teach people what we like and what we don't like in relationships. Boundaries can be verbal or they can be behavior. Sometimes when we don't answer our phone, we are setting a boundary to say, I don't want to talk.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes when we tell someone, hey, this isn't a good time for me to talk, we're also setting a boundary. So it's not just what we say, it's also what we do.
So, I often think of things relative to mental, physical, emotional, relational, spiritual. How do you think about boundaries inside of those kinds of categories, if you will, right?
Mm.
You just shared maybe some relational, but when you think about it, and the physical is pretty obvious as well, but the emotional and the mental, what does that look like?
I think that boundaries are 100% emotional and mental
Mm-hmm.
because we're
Mm-hmm.
doing things to preserve self. We are doing things to feel mentally well, to be strong, to be able to be in relationships with people. Sometimes when we're taking on too much, it takes away from ourselves. How can we practice being a spiritual being without practicing boundaries? I don't think it's possible.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. When you think about boundaries, what are boundary issues often that potentially show up as boundaries, but maybe they're disguised, Nedra, as something else?
Oh, a big one that, we've been talking about for years now is burnout.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I'm so burnout. And burnout is an overextension of saying yes, of doing too much, of feeling that you can manage the little bit of time that you have, that you will have more energy to do very hard things, to be in, terrible situations with people. It gets to a point where you hit a wall and then we
Mm-hmm.
see, well, I don't want to do anything. Now I'm
Mm-hmm.
depressed. Now I'm
Mm-hmm.
really anxious. Now I'm shutting down. Now I need to quit the job. Now I need to leave this relationship. Now I need to, do these things because I've done nothing. And I'm at a point now where I have nothing to give because I've
Mm-hmm.
said yes, 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 yes.
So, am I almost hearing you say, Nedra, that if somebody's burned out, it's their own fault?
Mm. I don't think it's their own fault. I think that is not a kind way to look at it. The world is set up for us to be busy.
Mm-hmm.
The
Mm-hmm.
world we live in now, it is very hard to say to someone, "Oh, I didn't see your message," because they'll DM you, they email you, then they call you.
uh-huh. Kind of
So
like what
can
I
we
did to you to get you on here today. No, I'm
yeah,
just
so
kidding.
isn't it possible that,
Mm-hmm.
people can get in touch with us and to say, like, "Oh, I didn't see that," or "I'm unplugged." It's like
Mm-hmm.
that is a really interesting way for us to think about people being, or hey, I actually can't do all of these things
Mm-hmm.
today. It
Mm-hmm.
seems like we now live in a world where we see people doing so much, especially with social media. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I don't follow some things I'm going to say here, but like those accounts where you see people preparing like multiple perfect meals, and in our brains it's like, oh my gosh, they made all these things in one day, instead of,
Right.
they batch some content. And
Mm-hmm.
your lasagna is great even if it's not as picturesque as
Yeah.
this person. It probably tastes just as good or better, you
Mm-hmm.
know? So we see all of these things that we're trying to achieve. We have to have this, we have to have that, and this is how you fit it into the extra 2 hours you have after work. It's impossible.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not our fault because it is the system now, I
Mm-hmm.
believe, is set up for us to fail or to acknowledge that there is too much to be done and we need more help and support than we may have initially thought.
Yeah, and it's hard to say no, isn't it? I mean, it's hard to say no, but what I'm hearing you say, it's important to say no. Because when we
Mm,
say no, Nedra, I often say when I say no to something, whatever that might be, I'm actually in fact saying yes to something else. And potentially that something else was something that I had gotten clear on and was intentional, was important. And so I'm creating a boundary to say no so that I can say yes. But it's hard. Particularly, I think human beings tend to want to make other people happy.
mm,
So we feel like the yes is happy, but then maybe we show up to that moment, right?
mm.
And we don't have any energy or we're not our best selves because we've said yes and yes and yes and yes. How do you coach people, given what you shared, right? That the world is set up for this. There's systems in place that allow us to know that somebody's seen it, they've read it. How could they not? How do you teach people to create these kind of boundaries in a world that demands such visibility at some level?
Well, it's important to know how not having boundaries has impacted you, how
Mm,
always being available, being on, saying yes, not declining has impacted your life. Are you sleeping 8 hours? Let's do a life assessment.
mm-hmm,
Are you sleeping 7 to 8 hours? And maybe not sleeping, but in the bed and ready to fall asleep for that length of
mm-hmm,
time.
mm-hmm,
Are you practicing some sort of social care? Are you having connections with friends and family? Are you able to eat, 3 meals a day
mm-hmm,
if that's your
mm-hmm,
thing? Are you able to move your body? The yeses should come after all of that stuff. Those are the basics.
mm-hmm,
And
mm-hmm.
often, what I hear people say, I don't have time to eat. Could you imagine a thing like eating we don't have time for because we've overcommitted with more work projects so we couldn't even grab a granola bar?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
So now our health is impacted because we've overextended ourselves. So we have to
mm-hmm,
think about the ways in which physically, mentally, spiritually, how am I impacted by always saying yes?
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. How do you think you know when you need to set some boundaries? I mean, how do you know? I mean, do you feel it physically, mentally,
Mm,
relationally? How do you know, man? Because I come from a world of sports where I sort of think you got another gear somewhere in there. Go get it. Go get it and get it done. Right? The best of the best sort of get down deep and find it. And I used to think that was inside of us and me. And if people didn't have that, maybe they were weak.
mm,
But what I've learned as I've gotten older is what you teach and boundaries and saying no and sort of stopping the grind at some point is imperative because we need
mm,
recovery, right?
yeah.
But it's hard to learn that, and sometimes we learn it through mistakes, which I certainly have. But in the spirit of sort of stopgapping people before they get to that place of just pure exhaustion or lose the things in their lives that matter most because they've said yes to all these other things without intention. How do we know when we need to do that?
Mm. Well, we're both from Michigan, and
Yes.
I will tell you, I just watched the Barry Sanders
Yeah.
documentary.
Okay.
And the thing I loved most about it is how he left a career that he loved to be with his children,
Mm-hmm.
to live a slower paced life,
Mm-hmm.
to be able to do things in his own way. Now, of course, the sports world is like, how could he?
Mm-hmm.
But I think the mental health, the emotional health, the spiritual health were certainly pleased with his decision to honor his knowing and
Mm-hmm.
say, I've done a great job and now I can stop. We expect people, isn't it interesting?
Totally.
Expect people to retire when they are broken down.
You're so right.
Like, they're injured, they're out of
That's
commission,
so good. Totally.
nobody else wants to pick them up. But the the nerve of him to stop when he was on top, the
Mm-hmm.
nerve of him to not want to do more interviews and just all of these things where the pressure was there. And he's like, no, actually, yeah, I'm still a young man and I'd like to go fishing on Saturdays. I don't want
Mm-hmm.
to practice.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Mm-hmm.
like
Sure.
we see how the world is set up for you to just go, go, go. And
Yep.
so many of us believe that. I have, some clients who are former athletes, and the physical injuries that
Yeah.
I hear about and how they just kept going. I prayed and my arm was spraining.
Yep.
I'm like,
Yep.
why?
Yeah. Yeah.
Why did you do that? And now your arm just cracks. It's just it's just
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
just
Oh
doing
yeah.
it.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Totally. You're so
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, that's the physical burnout. Your body
Yeah.
is like, look, we've had enough.
Mm-hmm.
I can't do anymore. But you're like,
Mm-hmm.
nope, I gotta keep going. And
Mm-hmm.
we do that not just with sports. We do that with work, professional work. We do that with our friendships. We do that in our partnerships. And we certainly, oh my gosh, parenthood. I'm a parent. If you sit around and talk to a group of parents, oh the oh they got to go to this activity and that activity and they
Oh
have to
yes. Insane.
we have this societal expectation that we don't stop. We have more in us. We have to keep going. There's something left. You can do
Mm-hmm.
one more thing. You can finish that load of clothes today.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I've been practicing most is leaving things undone.
Mm.
There is nothing that needs to be finished today.
Wow.
I have been telling myself when I look at my emails, I'm like, I'm not a heart surgeon. There is
Right.
nothing in this. And would they email me if I needed to be in surgery? No.
Yeah. That's so
I,
true.
now I'm helping people with mental health and
Sure.
emotions, but I'm not physically saving your life.
Right. Right.
So
Right.
some of these emails, they are important, but they are
Mm-hmm.
not urgent.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's perspective, isn't it? At some level. I mean,
Hmm.
at some level we do need that. But I'm also hearing you say we need intention,
Hmm.
right? I mean, at some level, is that what's the linchpin, if you will, the the linchpin to the intention that has to happen that then ladders up to the yes and no. In other words, at some point, Barry Sanders went, you know what? This is amazing. I mean, gosh, I get to do something that I dreamed as a boy to do. And now I'm doing it and I'm at the top and I'm there and I'm going to hit eject, right? But
Hmm.
he had to have put an enormous amount of thought around that. I haven't watched the
Hmm.
documentary, but I will. But how do you coach people to get intentional so that they can make those kinds of decisions before they make the kinds of mistakes or go too far and then regret it?
Mm. Well, getting someone to figure out what their values are. When I think about parents who are burnt out, it's like, what do you desire for your children? Oh, I want them to be well rounded. Well, there is more than one way to make a person well rounded. It might not be
Hmm.
5 activities.
Right.
So, if you want them to be well rounded, does that mean more one on one time for conversation and one activity? Like
Yeah,
what does
totally.
that what does that mean? I want to succeed in my career. Okay, well, you want to succeed in your career, what does that mean? In my industry, I'm a therapist. You have a lot of therapists who will charge more and see less clients, or you
Hmm.
have some who will charge less and see more clients.
Hmm. Hmm.
So it's like, what is your value? I want to see a bunch of clients, or I want to make a living and still be able to have time for myself.
Hmm.
So it really depends on, my intention with this thing is I want to take care of my family. How much energy do I need to put into this to take care of my family? One of my things in relationships is I want to be a good listener. I want to ask people questions. I want them to know that I care. So there are times where I may, I'll pick up the phone and I'll say, "Hey, let me call you back later. This isn't a good time to talk." What am I saying? I can't pay attention to you right now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So if I want to listen to you, I can't do it while I'm watching this movie.
Mm-hmm. Right. Right.
I might not be able to do it while I'm at a doctor's appointment.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
can listen to you when I make time to listen to you. So if it's urgent, important, I'll be late to the
Right.
appointment. But if
Right.
we're just, chatting, I want to pay attention, and this isn't a good time for me to pay attention.
Mm-hmm. How do you set and or communicate boundaries in business as a leader, or
Hmm.
with, if you're working for someone, with your
Hmm.
boss?
Hmm.
A lot of people feel the pressure to say yes, to do the extra, to go out for the cocktail, the dinner, the whatever, when they really don't want to.
Hmm.
And so whether you're a boss and you want to be accessible, right?
Hmm.
Or whether you work for someone who you would deem to be demanding at some level, maybe is a strong word, but how do you coach people to create boundaries where maybe they feel like it's really, really hard to do because of the result that it could create for them?
Hmm. Well, with leaders, I think that they show what their boundaries are by being available all the time. But it could be a wonderful work environment when a leader says that after 6 o'clock, I do not answer my phone until the next day at 9, or I won't
Mm-hmm.
return any work emails. That really sets the tone of what
Mm-hmm.
the work environment could be. Research has shown that people who rest are better workers. People who
Mm-hmm.
have more time off are better workers. So, what are we teaching people by being in a 24-hour work cycle? they're
Mm-hmm.
not even they're not even showing up with their best ideas because they haven't had enough time to go have fun and play and
Sure.
enjoy life and come back recharged and ready to give and
Mm-hmm.
ready to be of service. So leaders are in a wonderful position to, if they don't want to model it, because some people love to answer an email at 8 p.m.,
Mm-hmm.
allow other people to not respond to you.
Mm-hmm.
So
Make that
you
clear, communicate that is what I'm hearing you
yeah,
say. Say, look, if
communicate.
I send you an email, you do not need to respond.
You do
If I
not
need
need to
you, I'll call you.
respond.
Right.
Yeah, it's not an emergency. It's just, I've heard some people say, when I get home from work, I cook dinner, I do some laundry, I put the kids down, and about 9 o'clock, I hop back on those work emails. The intention is not for everybody to respond at 9 o'clock. It's just
Mm-hmm.
like that is the time where I can plug back in.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
it's an emergency as much as it is, this is a time that works for me. And although emails can be sent at any time and so can text messages, it's not my intention for you to respond. Now, it can be really helpful if you use a service where you can schedule stuff. I know
Sure.
on Monday mornings, people are sometimes like, wow, she sent 10 emails. It's like, actually, I sent that Friday night.
Let me tell you
But I
something. I do that
scheduled it.
all the time, girl.
Yeah, I'll
Yeah.
schedule it. And I'll
Yeah.
even on Fridays, I feel like most people are kind
Mm-hmm.
of,
Yeah.
out of
Shutting
the
it down.
office. Yeah, so I schedule it for let this could wait till Tuesday next week. Let me just
Right.
put a date on here and you
Yeah.
get it. And because
Yeah.
you know what? That helps me not receive a bunch of responses at one
Mm-hmm.
time. So if I
Mm-hmm.
spread them out, okay, this, I might have five come in this day, I don't want 20 responses.
Right. 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 So you're, yeah. Yeah, for sure.
So
For,
maybe, there's some strategy with the scheduling. And if you're a worker who has a boss who expects you to overextend yourself or maybe not have boundaries or not honor, some of your personal commitments because you have these professional things, it can be very important for you to be firm and say, these are areas that are not negotiable for me.
mm-hmm.
At every Tuesday at 6:30, I go to a class.
Mm-hmm.
I have to
Mm-hmm.
go to my Pilates class.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Mm-hmm.
so
Mm-hmm.
life will wait for this 1 hour that I'm in my Pilates class.
Mm-hmm.
On when I'm on vacation, I vacate. So I
Mm-hmm.
am not
Mhm.
available. I
Mhm.
am somewhere drinking some coconut water. I am
Mhm.
not available. You don't even want to talk to me because I might start,
Mhm.
singing songs. So this is
Mhm.
not a good time. But we have to be clear about that because I think, many of us have been in a position where it's like the boss who's like demanding. And a lot of times that's that person's personality style,
Right,
right?
right.
And a
Sure.
huge part of business is learning to work with different personality styles and learning how to communicate with people. We often think, well, I can't say anything to them. Well, that's not communication. You
Right.
have to learn how to communicate with this person who may be demanding, who
Mhm.
might have, more flexible boundaries with work. You can be, a wonderful worker in the time that you're working. I
Mhm.
remember having many jobs where people would, you know, they would come in late and stay late. I was 9 o'clock. I would be there at 9, and I'm leaving at 4:59. My coat is on. I'm ready to walk out. Do
Yeah.
not call me. I am done for the day. There are other people. They would stay there to 6:30. So everybody's work personality is different. For me,
Mhm.
I'm like I got a little traffic I want to get through. I don't want to leave,
Mhm.
during a
Mhm.
certain time. And if I leave right now, I know how I can get home by a certain
Right.
time. So
Right.
it's not like we have to all work the same. And sometimes when we're in work environments, we feel like I have to work like everybody else. And what we should focus on is I have to do my work.
Mhm.
And it may
Mhm.
not look like how everyone else is doing their work.
Mhm. Mhm. Nedra, I have to just expose myself here. I did not hit record on my Zoom recorder until 1 minute ago.
What does that
So
mean?
that means that everything that we've said so far was not recorded on the voice box.
What does that mean?
That
So
means
you
you
don't
want
have any vocal.
that means you want to kill me, pretty much. That pretty much means you want to probably kill me. No, I'm kidding. But so what we'll do, do you have, can I rewind the tape a little bit on some of this? And is there any way we can go until noon by chance?
We can go until noon, but I have to take a break about 11:45 and just go open my door. But
Is that
yes,
okay? Oh my
yes.
gosh, I can't believe it. I thought I hit it and I just looked down and I didn't. I've done
Okay.
that one other time. I can't imagine though there's a better person to do it with than a therapist, by the way.
It's
So, but
fine.
I just grabbed that work part, but I might just go back. I'll do your cut in again on the first question, but I might just hit a couple of these again and then we'll keep flowing. We're flowing. I mean, it's great. This is
Okay.
awesome. Is that okay?
Yes.
We'll
Yes,
keep it
that's
tight
fine.
and I appreciate your grace.
Okay. Do
Okay.
I need to record on my end at all?
No, I've got it. See, I have a video box. I have a video here, but then they get my audio on a different box so that it's cleaner. So, all right, we're gonna keep cranking though, because I want to honor your time, okay? And then the minute you've got a hop at 11:45, just for a sec to open the door, you just say the word, okay?
Okay.
Nedra, how do you define boundaries, right? I mean, I want to just, you're boundary woman. I want to go into all things boundary. How do you define boundaries?
Boundaries are spoken statements and it's also behavioral. Sometimes a boundary is, saying to someone, hey, this isn't a good time for me to talk. And other times it is looking at your phone and allowing that call to go to voicemail because it's not a good time to talk. So you can do boundaries either way. Sometimes we do both, and other times, we choose whatever might feel comfortable for us.
Hmm. How do you communicate boundaries? Because it can be hard
Hmm.
to communicate boundaries, and particularly with people that you care about, people that you love, or other people like I've heard you talk about, right? I mean, now we live in a world where people can see if you've read it, if you've opened it. So, how do we communicate those boundaries in a world where there's so much visibility to what we're seeing?
Hmm. Well, just because you're online doesn't mean that you're available. Just because you have a cell phone doesn't mean that you're always reachable. And we have to model that. And that is the really hard part because people often see us like with our phones and they're like, well, if you have your phone all day, I know you're looking at,
Mhm.
you know,
Mhm.
when I send you something. And there may be times where you need to say, actually, I don't have email on my phone.
Mhm.
Actually,
Mhm.
I don't have social media on my phone. So just letting
Ah.
people know that,
Mhm. Mhm.
my phone is not for that thing. As a matter of fact, I don't have Instagram on my phone.
Wow.
So I have to intentionally grab my iPad and go look. And usually I look at, and but if I'm away from home, I don't have Instagram.
Mm. Wow.
So,
Yeah.
the assumption is so a lot of times, for my friends that I'm constantly DMing, they know that. I have a friend, I don't I have TikTok, but I never use TikTok. So she'll send me TikTok videos and I'll say, "Oh, thank you for sending me these," because I never look at the app. The only
Mm.
reason I know to go
Mhm.
look at this cooking video is because you
Mhm.
sent it to me. It's not even an app I use.
Wow. But that's a
So,
brilliant tactic.
yeah, because social media is supposed to be social. And so I
Right.
do like to socially engage with people. And it's also important for me to let people know that I don't use this app that much. So if there's a time where you really want to talk to me, send me a text or text me the video. I will go and
Mhm.
look at it. Or whenever I pick up, my Instagram or whatever, I will go through all the things and respond, but
Mhm.
I'm not just staring at it. I'm not
Mm.
looking at my
Mhm.
email. I don't get
Mhm.
email notifications on my phone. I turned off my notifications. So I have to go in and look. So it's
Mhm.
not an instant messaging thing
Mhm.
anymore.
Sure. Sure. What are some other sort of tactics like that that you use in your own life? I mean, you're the boundary expert at some how do you what are some of the other things like that? Because that's pretty cool what you just shared that creates
Mm.
a boundary for you. What are some other things that you do intentionally to help create that?
I really love the do not disturb feature on our cell phones. Mine is
Mhm.
on from 8 to 8. I usually wake up and turn it off about around 7 because there's some dinging that I need to hear around that time. But mine is usually on from 8 to 8. I try to separate things on devices. So, like I said, with my iPad,
Mhm.
I do like that's like my mini TV. I put it on top of the washing machine. I fold clothes. Like it's really a TV for me. But
Uh-huh.
my Instagram is on there, and there are a few other things on there that I may look at, like if I need to post to Instagram. So that stuff is on my iPad, but for my phone, I'm trying to use it as a social device, as a
Mhm.
connection device. I
Mhm.
do like it as a scheduling tool, but recently it has been very important for me to monotask. And so one of the
Yeah.
things that I'm doing is I want to watch this TV show without touching my phone. And when the urge comes up to touch that phone, the question is why? Why are you wondering if somebody sent you a message? Why are
Mhm.
you
Mhm.
wondering if this email has been responded to? Why? And then I say, finish watching TV. Uh,
Mhm. Mhm. Right,
or
right, right.
finish doing what you were doing. You're already doing something.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You're already doing something, and here it is, you want to do something else. And then
Mhm.
there are times where I'm intentional about, let me turn on this passive show so I can online shop. But the
Mhm.
intention
Right.
is really important. This is a show I want to pay attention to.
Mhm.
This is a show that I just need some background noise to my
Mhm.
shopping experience. I'm
Mhm.
considering it like listening to some music in a store.
Mhm. Mhm. Right, right, right.
but
Yeah.
but being intentional around, do you always want to be contacted? How do you
Right.
want to be contacted? Who are the people that, if something is going on in the world, who's going to override that do not disturb? Do you
Mhm.
want your
Mhm.
ringer on? Just all of these things, because so much of this stuff, it automatically comes with the phone. You have
Mhm.
to set it up.
Sure, sure.
Automatically, it's going to ring, it's going to send the emails, every notification is going to be turned on. You have to go in and say, don't allow, don't allow, don't, oh, take that off, mute that, take that notification from the top of the screen, put it on the bottom. You have to
Yep.
set your
Yep.
systems up.
Yep. Yep. What are boundary issues often disguised as?
Mm. A really big one right now is burnout.
Mm-hmm.
Burnout comes up a lot. Burnout with relationships, burnout with work, burnout with parenting. We hit a wall and then we don't want to do anything. We're tired, we're
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
depleted, we're frustrated, and it's like, I need to run away, I need to get away. I'm tired of this stuff. Burnout is not your fault. We live in a system that expects us to do too much.
Mm-hmm.
If it's not the system, it's the people. I'm a parent, and often when you're talking to other parents, there's a lot of conversation around, are your kids in this? Are your kids in that? What did you cook for dinner?
Right.
What did that? So it's like people expect you to be doing all the things. And when you're like, we're having leftovers, my kids are watching TV, they. I'm raising them like it's the 90s. They're watching
Yep, yep,
TV. They're fine.
yep. Exactly. Brady Bunch, baby, let's go.
Yes, yes, they'll be fine. It's okay. I watched a lot of TV and look at me.
Yep,
Um,
yep, yeah, yeah.
when you're not like doing all of the things, when you're not as busy as everyone else, there is this sense of, oh my gosh, I feel a little left out because I'm not in the thing. But
Mm-hmm.
it's really relaxing to not overload yourself, to just get out of bed without hurrying and being rushed and having to
Mm-hmm.
do the next thing now. And, just all of this stuff that we as adults have taken on, that I just can't even believe that I used to be like, oh, being an adult isn't that hard. It's like, oh yeah, you're right. It's much harder.
Yeah, yeah,
Little
yeah,
Nedra, it's
sure.
it's much harder than I thought it would be. It's more than just paying your bills. It's also laundry and social engagements and cutting grass and all
Yeah,
of the
yeah,
things.
yeah, yeah. How do how do you unlearn and retrain yourself and maybe navigate the relationships that maybe once had certain boundaries and now they're going to have different ones? So,
Mm.
you know, I think about for me, Nedra, when I was young in my career, I mean, I worked all day long, all the time when I was a sports agent, consistently. I mean, my husband moved in next door to me and he jokes and says, if I hadn't moved in next door to you, I don't know that we would be married because I was running around so much. And
Yeah.
so, but then, because there are times in life when we're out of balance, and then there's times where maybe we have an opportunity to create greater alignment. How do you recenter yourself, if you will, and potentially those around you to level set once you've sort of at a different place in your life, personally and professionally?
It can be really helpful for us to remind ourselves and others, I'm not in that season anymore. There was a season, maybe
Mm-hmm.
10 seasons,
Mm-hmm.
where
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
where I worked 24/7. But in this season, I am resting because
Mm-hmm.
all of that work was for this. It
Mm-hmm.
wasn't to continue working that hard. I don't
Mm-hmm.
even need to do it anymore.
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
even need to work it that hard anymore. So if you're expecting that from me, this is a new season. No
Mm-hmm.
season. When we think about TV shows, no season is like the other season. And that really, as viewers, we're like irritated. Well, season 2 was better than season 3. Yeah, well, season 2 of me
Yeah.
might be a little different than season 10.
Yeah.
Um, so, you're expecting me to do those things that maybe I had more drive to do because that's what needed to be done at that time. And in this phase of life, you know, I prefer to be off by a certain time because I want to watch the sunset. I
Mm-hmm.
want I want to look out the window for 10 minutes by
Yeah.
a certain
Yeah.
time. So there
Sure.
may be some work that I don't want to do between 6:30 and 7:30 because
Sure.
there are other things.
Yeah.
At
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
time, I didn't care. I remember a time, oh gosh, I used to work all weekend. Saturdays and Sundays, I
Mm-hmm.
would work all weekend. And even on holidays sometimes. When I was a new therapist, I would
Mm-hmm.
work on holidays. If you wanted to come see me on the 4th of July, I'd be there.
Wow. Wow.
Now, I think I want the week off.
Right. Right.
I'm like, well, there were fireworks yesterday, so I
Right.
can't work the day after because there were fireworks. And then the day after that, still pretty sunny outside. I got barbecue left. It's like
Sure,
my
sure,
reasons have changed.
sure. What do you think got you there though? Right? I mean, because you're a therapist, you help people, you clearly love to give and to serve and to help others. And so you're saying no for the 2 day old barbecue and the yesterday firework. How do you like at some level, right? And Nedra, it makes me think about, I had a college coach that I represented who's an incredible human being, Tom Izzo. You might know his name, by the way, my Michigan girl, you sure do. So Izzo, I went to go to a game with him years ago, and he's a legendary coach, great human being. And it's probably 30 minutes before tip off. And Tom's like, come here, we got to go stop in here and do this real quick. And so we walk into this room, and there's probably about 800 people. And he runs up to the podium and goes, hey, guys, here's the deal tonight. And he kind of walks them through what to expect in the game. And literally everybody in the room had to have been north of 75 years old. And we walk out, and I look at Tom and I said, man, like, do you do that for every single home game? And he goes, yeah. I go, wow, man, I mean, tip-off's in 25 minutes, dude. Like, really? He goes, Mal, I've been doing it since I was a grad assistant. And I'm thinking to myself, right? So how do you do that, right? When you're a good human being, you're trying to not go from, I used to be able to do that, but now I'm big time and I can't do that, right? Tom's just not that kind of person. But there's a lot of people who listen to the show who, they've grown in their careers. They want to get better. They're peak performers. They lead others. And so what that means then is sometimes you might have to say no because your world's changed. But they feel like they're disappointing somebody. How do you do that?
Mm. Well, one question that came up while you were saying that is it still important to me? It
Cool.
sounds like it's still important to him.
Mm-hmm.
It's important to me to see my clients on a regular basis. Is not important to me to see them on their holiday.
Right.
It's not just my holiday.
Yeah.
It's the world's holiday.
Right.
I don't have to see you on this day.
Yeah.
We
yeah.
can see each other on Thursday, not Tuesday. Right.
Right.
So
right.
it's not that, oh, I don't see it's no,
Yeah.
it has shifted.
Right.
And I've even said, when new people are like, oh, are you taking clients? No way. Because I want everyone that I've already seen to have the space to be able to see me. So I don't have the availability to see anyone new because I'm committed to the people I'm already in relationship with in a therapeutic capacity. So that does mean that I don't have the space for new work.
So I want to sort of dig into some of the areas in life that I think people often deal with boundaries. And you have a book, Drama Free, and the Drama Free Workbook releasing in February. So I think about things like romantic relationships, your marriages, your partners, family, work, bosses, colleagues. What are some of the most common challenges people have in some of these categories? And how do you advise people to create healthy boundaries? Let's start with family.
We want people to like our boundaries. We want people to rejoice when we tell them no. We want them to do a happy dance for us when we reclaim our time. And it just doesn't happen. And when it doesn't happen, we feel like, oh my gosh, I should have never had a boundary because now my grandmother's mad at me. It's like, maybe your grandmother just needs to be mad. Maybe your mom is allowed to be upset. If I could speak for mothers, because I am one, I can't speak for every mother, but I've had my feelings hurt by my child telling me no, and I am still here today.
You made it. You lived through it.
I lived through it. It was the roughest thing ever. But I'm still here.
Right. Yeah.
They will be okay. And that's
Mhm.
really hard because we feel like, oh, it's my mom. And my kids used to say to me, I really want to be honest, but I don't want to hurt your feelings. And I've
Mm.
taught them well, because I say, I can manage my feelings and I need you to say what you need to say. So
Mm.
now they just say it and I regret ever saying it, because now I'm like, they are too honest. I do not
Right.
like this. Why did I teach them that? Take it back. Don't say
Uh,
anything to me.
so boundaries as a it's funny that you say that because my mom, I remember when I was a kid, she would go for walks sometimes and I would say, Mom, I want to come with you. And she'd
Mm,
say, Molly, no, I went on a walk by myself. And
yes.
and I remember being like, wow, but now, mother of three kids, you do need that space. We think our
Oh.
moms are, just super women, and we are kind of, by the way, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
No, I'm kidding, but it is hard as a mother, isn't it? Because we love. I mean, I call my girls my miracles. I
Mm-hmm.
absolutely live for my girls,
Yeah.
and
And I
boundaries
want
are
time away
hard.
from you. Yeah. And I want time
Yeah.
away from you. I love you so much. I want to go read by myself.
Mhm, mhm. But it's hard. It's hard
Yeah.
to say that, isn't it? How do you
Yeah.
do that? Whether it's with your children, with a spouse, uh, with a sibling, somebody that you love deeply.
I think we have to see it as us teaching people to be courageous in their own lives.
Mm,
Because, Molly, there came a day when you wanted to do something on your own and you were able to remember your mom
mhm,
saying that to you, and to say,
mhm,
ah, she was creating a boundary for herself. Why did little old me need to be on that walk, picking up
mhm,
sticks, walking
mhm,
slow, talking?
mhm.
I mean, just all the things, which is
Sure.
beautiful for a child to do. But if you're trying to just like look off in a tree or even
Mhm,
exercise, it's like, I have an intention.
mhm,
And there are
mhm,
walks that I may go on with you, and there are walks that I will go on by myself.
mhm, mhm. What about at work, right? With bosses and with people that work for you and with you, depending on what role you play. What can bosses do well to create space for the people that work for them? And what can the people that work for someone do if they need to create some boundaries to protect themselves, but they don't want to risk their career, their opportunities, their development, but they do need to create some boundaries? How do you coach that?
Well, with work, it could be very honoring to others for a supervisor, manager, CEO, boss of any level to honor the boundaries of other people and to encourage it. If you know that you work with someone who, maybe needs to leave by a certain time to get to that daycare, advocate for that. Oh, let's let her go because she has a hard out,
Mm-hmm.
or let's let
Mm-hmm.
him out of here
Mm-hmm.
because he needs to
Mm-hmm.
get home,
Sure.
instead
Sure.
of that person having to beg you to
Right.
leave because you're
Right.
being long-winded and you're not, really honoring this thing that they've
Mm-hmm.
already said, because there
Mm-hmm.
is some, power dynamic that people do respect, and you want to make sure that they know with you, you are a person who honors boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
It's not
Mm-hmm.
just you have to listen to everything I say, but also I listen to you as well and I care about
Mm-hmm.
you.
Mm-hmm.
Also, having some boundaries yourself. Some bosses, they don't have any boundaries and they expect the same from their team. I work all
Mm-hmm.
night, I answer emails at midnight, and what they're not modeling is sleep hygiene.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so you think, oh my gosh, I have to be up
Mm-hmm.
all night
Mm-hmm.
answering emails. But one wonderful thing you could do is just let it be known, oh, I didn't see that because I was sleeping. Oh, I
Right.
didn't check that because I was away from work.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a
Mm-hmm.
really,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
you're saying a lot by just being clear that, at 8 o'clock, I wasn't looking at work emails, because
Mm-hmm.
it takes some intention to go in and look at the work email.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I wasn't looking at them because my day was done.
Right, right. How do you how do you unlearn bad boundaries for yourself? In other words,
Mm,
Nedra, when I was a sports agent, I worked all the time. And my phone was with me. I bought pajamas with pockets. It rang constantly. And because when you have, several hundred athletes waking up every day, getting hired, fired, injured, healthy, released, traded, called up, called down, winning tournaments, losing, missing cuts, it is constant. And
mhm,
to succeed in that business, to truly succeed now at scale, right, with that
mhm,
many, you really kind of have to do that or you'll lose your clients, which is an intentional decision at some level that I made to to be available like that. But I don't have to be that way anymore, but I kind of do still operate like that.
mm.
How do you unlearn the 24/7 mindset, the grind, if you will, when you don't really have to go like that anymore, but you do? And
Mm.
you still love it, but there's probably a different way. Particularly now I'm 52 and before I was 23. So there's a reality around the physical capability too, right?
I heard you say a really wonderful thing. Like, if you want to carry your phone everywhere, you need pockets. What if you bought pants with no pockets? That's the first intention. I don't even want to be with the phone.
I tuck it right into my hip, girl. It just fits right in nicely in my little
Now
right
you're
here.
trying too
Right here,
hard.
baby.
You're trying too
No,
hard because
exactly.
the intention is to be without the phone.
Mm-hmm.
Um, as I was just reading a book called Do Nothing,
Mm.
and the author spoke about how when we make more money, we don't work less, we work
Right.
more.
Yep.
And the idea is supposed to be, when you hit the lottery, it's I'm gonna quit my job, or when I do this, I'm gonna do this. And what we typically do is we just do more of what we were
Mm-hmm.
already doing. It's like
Mm-hmm.
it's like I gotta do more, I gotta do more, I gotta do
Mm-hmm.
more.
Mm-hmm.
We have to determine what is enough.
Right.
When I
Yep.
get to this space, how will I start to delegate some things? How will I offload some things? What
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
things will I be able to release when I get to this space? Not
Mm-hmm.
how much more can I work? How can I work through vacations now so I can really keep this momentum going?
Mm-hmm. 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 So at some level it's asking ourselves, and we teach this actually our my energy clock book I wrote, but what am I chasing? That's a
Mm-hmm.
question I think is important, isn't it? That, or what am I chasing and why? And then to me that helps gain the clarity to set the boundaries,
Mm-hmm.
right? Relative to what to say yes and no to. Would you agree with that?
Yes, because I think sometimes we lose our way and we're just chasing and we don't even know what we're running after
Right.
anymore. In
Sure.
the beginning, it might be, a certain thing. I want to
Mm-hmm.
be this
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
in this career field. I want to make partner. I want to
Mm-hmm.
be the head of this department. I want to be the best, blah, blah,
Mm-hmm.
blah.
Mm-hmm.
But once you get there, then what?
Right, exactly. Sure.
You want to be the
Sure.
most overworked?
Right. Right.
You want to
Right.
be the most
Exhausted.
unrested?
Right.
Right. Like, what are you? Ooh, you're the person with the most bags under their
Yeah.
eyes.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
ooh,
Yeah.
you look the most tired. Like,
Yeah.
what are you trying to prove now?
Sure. Totally. Sure. Well, and I think, and we live in a world, don't we, where it's busy is like a badge of honor, oddly,
Mm-hmm.
right? I
Mm-hmm.
mean, and saying no is a powerful thing. What is your take on balance versus alignment? And I ask that
Mm-hmm.
with the sense that I think balance is BS. I think it's
Mm-hmm.
impossible. It's about
Mm-hmm.
alignment relative to your core values, which then ladders
Mm-hmm.
up to what you're chasing, which then ladders up to what to say yes and no to, in turn, creating appropriate boundaries. How do you think about the word that people use so much, balance, relative to alignment and boundaries?
I think of balance as something we do in yoga and not something we do with our
I love that.
schedules.
I love that. That's
like,
so good.
like
That's so
isn't
good.
balancing like okay the tree pose? That's balancing. I'm not trying to tree pose my schedule.
Right,
I'm
girl. That
trying
is
to.
so good. I love it. Yeah.
Because there's, if you're working, let's say 40 to 50 hours,
Mm-hmm.
there's no possible way that you're doing anything else this week for 40 or 50 hours. So balance is already out the window. It's not
Mm-hmm. So
you can't
true.
even you can't even get those figures high in any
Right.
other area.
Yeah.
So there is no balance. Now we can create some harmony, we can create some alignment, some things that attach to who we are as people, but balance is a beautiful word to try to organize chaos.
That's awesome. Wow. Yeah, wow, that's so good. By the way, that was amazing, that comment. Okay, I'm going to ask you one more question, then we'll go to rapid fire, okay? And
Mhm.
get you out the door, Zach Ruby. Um, it, when you, Nedra, what would you say are the best ways and the most common ways that you find with all the work that you've done, the books that you've written, the people that you've worked with and served, to communicate boundaries in relationships that matter to you? How do you do that, right? Not necessarily in the moment, like, I can't talk right now, I'll call you back. But I'm saying, like, look, how do you communicate boundaries to a relationship that really matters to you, but you've got to create some space and some structure.
Start with your feelings and make it all about you. Lately, I've been feeling
Mm,
really panicky
mm,
because I realize I have overloaded myself with tasks and I want to be able to take on more things, but actually, I cannot.
mm-hmm,
It's
mm-hmm.
not that what you're asking me is unreasonable. I can't do
Right,
it.
right.
I can't do it. I'm
Yeah,
going to admit defeat.
yeah,
Like,
yeah. Oh,
I
you're
am
owning it. You're owning it.
I'm owning it.
Yeah,
It's not
good
that
stuff.
it's too much.
Right,
Someone else could do this. It won't be me.
right, right, right. I love it. All right, listen, Nedra, you've been incredibly generous with your time, and so I want to fire some quick rapid fire questions. You ready?
Yes.
Favorite book?
Can I pick my own book? Oh my gosh. Set Boundaries, Find Peace is my favorite book. Second
Let's
favorite
go.
book.
All right, what's
you
your
know,
second favorite book?
whatever books I'm reading at the moment, I think I
Mm,
fall in love with books. As I read them, I return to some books. I return
sure,
to
sure.
uh, The Color Purple, and I return to The Four Agreements, and I return to Atomic Habits. But right now, I'm reading Do Nothing, and I'm reading How Not to Always Be Working. And those books are really amazing in this
Mm.
moment.
What do you do when you feel, Nedra, what do you do when you feel overwhelmed or unfocused?
I go to bed early. I think that a good night's rest is a cure to a very blurry day. And I understand
Mm,
that for some of us, it's not easy to go to
yep.
sleep because of anxious thoughts and all of these things. And so I am a firm advocate of a bedtime routine like I'm a newborn baby. So I give myself a bath, I rub myself down with lavender, I
Amen.
turn on some sleep sounds, and I do the best I can to get some rest.
Mm, amen. So the show's called Game Changers. Who or what is a game changer who inspires you and why?
Uh, my biggest struggle is picking one thing for any question. um, my favorite game changer, earlier I mentioned um, Barry Sanders and us both
Mm-hmm.
being from Michigan. At this
Mm-hmm.
very moment, I love a person who is able to choose themselves. And so,
Mm,
watching that documentary, I think he was such a wonderful game changer for his field and probably for his family to be able to make such a huge shift in his
mm-hmm.
career.
Mm. I love it, Nedra. Thank you for the work that you do, the lives you change every single day.
You're welcome. Thank you.